beaten me to it. Why do we record the sessions? Well, we record the sessions for a couple of reasons. One, so if you happen to have to miss a session, you can jump in and watch the recording shortly after, once we download it and upload it. And I do put a little content warning. We do have a look at some crash scenes. We don't look at anything overly graphic, but it is just something to be aware of if that could disturb you. We're looking at them to try to work out how to prevent them and how to lessen the severity of any incident. Now, this is our program moderator, Kathy. Over to you, Kathy. You can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about this Zoom that I think most people are getting to work, but one or two might be struggling.
Yes, that's what I'm here for, behind the scenes, to make sure it all runs smoothly. As we can see, it sometimes works. So yeah, I'll be your program moderator. Please get in touch with me if you can't make a session, if you have any technical issues, or any admin or logistic questions during the session. It is the webinar version, as Ken mentioned, but what you can do is chat with us via the chat functionality. And you can select for your messages to go to everyone or to hosts and panelists only. But we do like to share to everyone, so try and keep it that way. If you did want to ask something and you didn't want to put your name to it, you can ask anonymously in the Q&A and I'll ask the question. And Ken will stop along the way, but if you have any questions, just type them in as we go, because when we stop for questions, you know, typing takes a little bit of time. So just type them in as we go along. You can raise your hand and then we can unmute you and you can have a chat. So if you want to hear your own voice as well, you can just raise your hand and I can organise that for you. Probably the easiest thing, if for any reason it's not working, you can't get connected, you can't, not getting anything, the old shut down and restart usually fixes like 95% of the problems. But there is a dial-in phone number if we get to that stage. And alternatively, I'll send you my mobile number and you can ask me questions via text or via email.
Absolute worst comes to worst, you can watch the recording.
Absolutely.
What's this learning management system you speak of, Kathy?
Thank you, Ken. This is where we house everything. So the recordings of the webinars will be found there, and I'll show you where that is a little bit later. All the presentation materials are there. All the reference materials that Ken talks about. So we'll go through a number of different guidelines and other items for you to help you along your safe system assessment journey. And it's all housed in this. Now, you would have received an email from Safe System Solutions with a login and password. If you're having any trouble with that at all, just shoot me an email and I'll get you sorted out. And at the end of every session, there'll be a short multiple choice style quiz just to make sure that you really got something out of it. And we'll ask you to do that at the end of every one of these live sessions. So very short, 10 minutes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And absolutely, if you have not got access to the learning management system, you need it to successfully complete this course. You cannot complete this course without it. So make sure you have access. Let's keep ticking along. And this is me. My name's Ken Beer. I'm the principal engineer at Safe System Solutions. There's a little QR code to my LinkedIn. I like to keep in contact with people via LinkedIn and put out lots of different road safety bits and pieces, either via our Safe System Solutions page or myself. And that's because the road safety as a topic is just, we're always learning, we're coming up with new things, finding out new stuff, and I like to put it out there for conversation. So feel free to connect with me, either use that QR code, which will be in the bottom corner for the first few slides, or my mobile number, email address are there. So if you have any technical questions about the content of the course, shoot them through to me, give me a call, happy to chat through anything with you there. and Kathy for any of the management, logistics, admin of the course. So we do a couple of things to try to keep you engaged. And one of them is our friend Wally the Wombat. And some of you might know Wally. Wally appears in our road safety audit course and cycling infrastructure course and a few others. But your job is to count how many times Wally appears throughout the sessions. So each session, random number of times, Wally is going to appear and you keep a count. Wally looks like that. Little warning sign. Could be anywhere on the slide. That's just an example one. So Wally count is 0 at the moment, but keep a track, and it's one of your quiz questions at the end of each module. How many times did Wally appear in that module? And we like to give away a few prizes. Kathy, is that the prize pit you're in? Oh, look at that. Prizes behind Kathy. So you could win prizes throughout this course. You win prizes by answering questions, asking good questions, volunteering to present case studies as we get to that. And if you arrive early at the sessions, the few minutes before official kickoff time, we just do a bit of trivia. It could be general knowledge trivia, it could be road safety trivia, and there's a few prizes to be won there. You got any prizes there, Kathy, with you? No, or is it just the prize pit?
It's just the prize pit at this stage, but I'll bring some prizes to the next session.
And how do they get their prizes?
It's magic. Actually, it could be considered magic. It is Australia Post. After the course, any prizes that you've won and your certificate will be posted to you. And if you get it, then it truly is a magical thing.
Good. And in order to get that certificate, the successful completion, we do have a competency benchmark in this course, and we don't shy away from that. We want people to leave this course if they have a certificate of successful completion. It means that they have got over a benchmark that we've set. And there's some pretty easy stuff to do, which is just turn up to 4 out of the 5 live webinars and view the one you don't attend. We'd love for you to come to all 5 live ones so you can interact, ask questions, answer questions, be involved in the little exercises we've got and all of that sort of stuff. But we know life can be chaotic and you may have to miss one. If it gets really chaotic and you have to miss more than one, you get in contact with Kathy and have a chat about that. We need you to complete all the set tasks, quizzes, exercises, assignments, get out there on the site visit and complete the report that you're going to have to do. And here's the one, which is the sort of the pass mark, and we require 80%. So there's a series of things that get marked. The quizzes get marked, and they're multiple choice ones, but the assignments and the actual safe system assessment report get marked by our experienced safe system assessors, myself or one of my colleagues, and we require you to get more than 80%. Now, that sounds scary, but you have up to 3 attempts. You have the option of one-on-one coaching, so a Zoom call with myself or a colleague to talk through issues or things you don't understand. Everything that you're required to do will be covered in the course content. So we are pretty confident you'll be able to get up to that. If you can't get up to the 80%, I've failed as well. So I'm not going to let that happen by ensuring we have enough one-on-one coaching that you get your head around these concepts. Kathy, any questions at this stage? So I really do want people popping the questions in as we go. Don't wait for that point where I say any questions, as Kathy said, because it's often you start typing, I've moved on, and then we're jumping back and forward. So just as you think of it, type it in. Kathy's behind the scenes doing a wonderful job collecting comments. And I think we're good to...
We are good. The slides, a copy of the slides is in each module. So there is a reference documents folder which contains reference documents, but in module 1, you'll see PDF, which is the slides for this particular session.
Did you want to jump into that now, Kathy?
Yeah. Okay, great.
Steal the screen off me. As we said, the learning management system is super important for you to get into and start to use. It's fairly intuitive. Hopefully you'll be okay with that. But yeah, you can find a PDF of all the slides and other resources available.
Be handy if I could find the course myself.
Keep going. Come back later.
Sorry.
Should we keep going and come back later?
Yeah, good idea. Thanks.
Okay. Straight off the bat, I want to talk about where safe system assessments fit in the independent assessment of transport projects, because it can be a bit confusing, because there's another assessment technique that many people are familiar with, and it's road safety audit. And I know some of you are road safety auditors, or at least have done the course, and actually know some of you are out there doing audits as well. So road safety audits are that independent check for safety. So we also have, I suppose, independent design reviews, or where a designer will hand their design to somebody else and say, hey, can you have a look at this, please, and do a review? And that's where you'll have somebody else, rerun calculations, check for, is it logical, check that, all the design requirements have been met and standards and things. And there's a bit of overlap with road safety auditing there, but there's certainly stuff that sits outside that. Now, safe system assessments, they're I suppose, a different technique that overlaps on quite a fair bit of road safety audit stuff, bit of design review stuff, has some stuff outside of all of that. Some of you may have heard of safety in design. Now, safety in design is a way to, I suppose, check that a piece of infrastructure can be constructed safely, can be maintained safely, built safely, decommissioned safely. So it's very wide looking assessment technique. And it's quite focused around the occupational health and safety, the workers using it, but it does go a bit broader than that. And then there's DDA, or Disability Discrimination Act. It is called different things in different jurisdictions, but it's the idea that we need to check that any infrastructure being built can be used by all road users of all ability. So people with vision impairment, or wheelchairs, or mobility devices and the like. So that's another technique. And so you can see there's overlap in a lot of these. But we're going to focus on that safe system assessment one. And I will come back to sort of referring to where safe system assessments are best utilized compared to road safety audits and the like down near the end of this course. But I just wanted to start with this for a bit of context, because a very common question is, or statement is, why do we need to do a safe system assessment? We're going to do road safety audits. They're the same thing, aren't they? They're just a new name for a road safety audit. Well, that's not the case. And the case really sits out in all of this difference and the way it's presented and what it's used for. But I'm going to jump straight into some content. Keep your questions coming in. Kathy will jump in and tell me when we've got different things. I'll be asking you some questions, so get your typing fingers ready, because chances to win prizes and all as we go. But I'm going to cover off a little bit of content. So this module is all about principles and elements or pillars of the safe system, kinetic energy thresholds, difference between traditional approaches to road safety and the safe system approach, best practice, for some areas that you might not think you're involved in, behavioural change and vehicle safety interventions. But you'll see that we can have input within a safe system assessment into some of these wider areas of road safety. And we're going to give reasons why speed is so critical to the safe system approach. There's a Wally. So Wally count is 1. No more help from me now. That's what you're looking out for. Could be a little smaller than that sometimes. Okay. This idea of the safe system. All right. And it's a term that is getting more and more accepted, and people are aware of the idea of the safe system. And you'll notice that it has filtered into all of our road safety strategies at jurisdictional levels, at national levels, actually at the UN level even. There is this commitment to the idea or the philosophy of the safe system. Now, interestingly, it's not a recent thing, it's not that recent a thing, that idea that we are committed to the implementation of the safe system as our way to address death and serious injury on our road network. In fact, Kathy, I'm going to give a prize to the person who can tell me what year did the Australian government commit to the implementation of the safe system? And it's actually, I think, the same year New Zealand did as well. So what year did we commit to the implementation of the safe system? You don't lose any marks for getting things wrong in the session. So just have a guess, because you're a chance to win a prize. Pop your thoughts in there.
And can you answer more than once? I think you can.
Yeah, go nuts.
There's a red hot hint for everybody in there. But Ashley's got it, 2004. Is that right, Ken?
That is right, Kathy. You've been brushing up on your safe system knowledge, I think.
Certainly have. Well done, Ashley.
Yeah, so Ashley is our first prize winner. Easy as that to win a prize. Lots of good guesses in there. But 2004 was when the federal government committed to the implementation of the safe system. Now, it's taken us a while to get a lot of traction with that, hasn't it? But let me take you back to that sort of 2004 time. And we had I'm going to point you at this diagram. So it's in 2004. This is what we were using. Now, I was working in the Victorian Road Authority, Vic Roads at the time, in the Road Safety Department, and we were nutting out the idea of the safe system and how it would work, and these at a national level, and also within Austroads and Vic Roads and other jurisdictions. And this diagram was produced, and you see in the middle of the diagram, and you may not be able to read it, that's all right, I'll tell you what it says. It says human tolerance to physical force, right? How much force can humans take before they break? Interesting starting point or center point of something to do with a road, but we're into biomechanics of injury straight away. Around that, we've got safer vehicles, safer speeds, and safer roads and roadsides. And then there's a circle around that. And that's actually pretty much where it was. It was going to go out. That is the safe system. All right, we're going to understand how much force humans can handle before they break. And we're going to adjust the vehicles, the roads and the roadsides, and the speeds to fit within those tolerances of force. And then, you know, as that started to get out there for consultation, a number of people sort of jumped up and down and said, are we not forgetting the road user and their responsibility and their requirements, and that we need safer road users? And this became a really polarizing issue. And we had sort of one camp that was saying, no, we don't need them. And in fact, by requiring that, we are negating the whole philosophy of the safe system, in the sense that if we're requiring humans to, you know, be perfect, then it's not a system for humans, because humans fail. Then we had the other camp say, well, they are the road user. They're making the decisions on the road. They're making, you know, there's limitations in what we can do with vehicles and roads. and managing these areas and all, and we need the road users to be alert and compliant and act appropriately and behave and not make bad decisions and mistakes. And this is then where they added this square around it and popped in alert and compliant road users. Now, I was more on the side of saying that, well, by putting that there, we're just going to give this luxurious get out of jail clause for everybody associated with decision making on the roads. Because you can almost always blame the road user if you want to. Like there is always road user issues associated with crashes, deaths, and serious injuries on the road. And we could spend the rest of our 2-hour session here just listing reasons and things that humans do on the road network or utilizing the road network, be it fall asleep, drink, speed, be distracted, drop their coffee in their lap. The list just goes on and on and on and on. And, they have different impairments, they have different bits and pieces. Now, there's this very multifaceted interacting web going on associated with the roads, the vehicle, the human machine environment interface and everything like that. However, a requirement for an alert and compliant road user in order for safety is not really in line with the safe system. Now, don't get me wrong that I'm saying everybody can just do whatever they want and we'll protect them. It's more an understanding that humans will do all sorts of crazy things, and we should be smart enough to look at our system and say, how do we protect the users of that system? So that sort of evolved into better diagrams, and there's a series of them out there now. Everybody's getting on board. Everybody's on the circle in the terms of the diagrams these days. You might recognize your jurisdiction's one there. I'm going to talk to this one for simplicity. Others, I've got a particular fondness for New Zealand's one, but I'm going to use this one just for simplicity. But I do encourage you, if you're a safe system sort of enthusiast, you'll certainly love seeing different people's or different jurisdictions' interpretation of the safe system. But human bodies are vulnerable is still in there, all right? And people make mistakes. So we've straight up the front acknowledged that people make mistakes. And we've said we've got a shared responsibility. So that's a really interesting one. We have a shared responsibility. The original purpose of the wording of shared responsibility was actually to push responsibility towards the system designers. And we are all system designers, all right, in one form or another. We happen to be, system users as well as designers if you travel around on the road network. But people making decisions around the design of the roads, the operation of the roads, the management of the roads, and the vehicle policies or anything like that. This is all system designers. And it was trying to say that, we can't just blame the road user for inappropriate behavior or whatever they're doing. We need to look at what we have control of that could have stopped that happening or could lessen the severity of that happening. And then we still have these levers where we have the vehicles, we have the roads and the roadsides, we've got the speeds. They've also put in the road user to acknowledge that we can continue to get gains from road user behavior, and that's an ongoing effort. So the principles there, you can see, I'll pop them into a diagram. The one that I haven't, I suppose, mentioned as much here is this aspiration of no death or serious injury. And that, I'm not going to fixate on it or focus on it a huge amount in this session, because it can make people switch off and say, well, I don't see that is ever possible. And to me, I don't get too caught up in that. I want people to understand that we are so far from what any other established transport industry would accept in terms of death and serious injury. We're astronomically out there in terms of road transport compared to aviation, rail, shipping. That if we could just get ourselves in check with that, we would save over 1 million lives a year, definitely, and well over 8 or so million serious injuries a year around the world. But there are targets of dates for 0 death and serious injury in different jurisdictions. And that can be a very useful thing to do, to set yourself a 0 date for a number of reasons. I won't go into the detail of it. But I will give a prize for anybody that can tell me what date their jurisdiction has as a date for 0 death and serious injury, a year. Anybody know their dates? Very good. Looks like Stuart's onto it with 2050. Yeah, so 2050 is a very popular date for 0 death and serious injury, Victoria, New Zealand, and Queensland's done. I don't know if they've publicly come out with that or not, but New South Wales has gone 2054, I believe, a bit more precise with theirs. So, there's some pretty amazing minds that work on that, and amazing thinkers around what does the future look like, what are the vehicles, what's the road users, what's the integration of different technology, what sort of policy changes would be required in order for us to genuinely get to close to 0 or 0 in that time frame. And they all acknowledge there's some pretty major shifts, but they can foresee a lot of this being possible. And anyway, if anybody has a particular interest in delving deep into that, I'm happy to have a long chat with you about it at some point. But I did mention other industries. I mentioned other transport industries, but if you quickly just look at a safety culture of a completely different industry. So we'll talk about manufacturing, and if we look at widget production, some sort of widgets. But the sort of lowest safety culture you can have is what we call a pathological safety culture. And that's where everybody is told that it's dangerous, and they're told to protect themselves the best they can. And there's often training and instructions provided and rules and the like. But it's very much the individual's responsibility in a dangerous environment. When you see the picture back in the day, you had these very dangerous machines, and you had kids working on there cleaning it, and people working in there maybe after a few drinks at lunch, and all sorts of dangerous stuff. But they were told what to do, and they were told what was safe and what wasn't safe, and off they went. And they'd be killed, they'd be crushed, kids would lose their arms. There's a fair bit of that going on. It was a fairly open system. There were people who were sort of brought in off the streets with very minimal training often, and put in there and asked to work for some money. And then you sort of go up from that to a reactive safety culture, and that's where they start recognizing the failures of different areas, that it's dangerous, more dangerous in one spot, and they fix those issues as they come along, be it a guard on something, or saying, well, actually, we're going to close off this area, and you only this one person can go in there, and these sorts of things. Then the economists get involved, and they come in and they look around and they identify payouts because they're interested in money. So how much are we paying out to families of kids that are killed? How much are we, how much is it costing us in lack of widget production, you know, when machines are down and we have to stop machines and those sorts of things. Okay. Well, if we invest and spend £30,000 back in these days, that'll actually give us £90,000 in return over the next 10 years. And that's, we can put a thing called a benefit cost ratio to that. And we get a benefit cost ratio of 3. And so that's a good investment. That's the sort of thing here. So then they start to go and do programs of safety upgrades. And then, of course, we see right up there in the proactive, which is where an extremely high level of safety is required. And widget production can happen as much as you can within that safety envelope. And if you start doing things that are outside that safety envelope, everything will be shut down and stopped. And then you need to continually invest in maintaining that. And it's not just maintaining the machines and the safety equipment and the like, it's also maintaining the culture of safety. And so, of course, you've already, no doubt, thought about this for the road system and thought, oh, I wonder where we are. And I've put a few clues in there with mobility instead of widget production sometimes. But, there's examples out there on the road network of definitely, we have a pathological safety culture to a degree. We tell people how dangerous it is. We know how dangerous it is. We simply license them and tell them that safety is their responsibility. And we often put that in, it's in our legislation often, that they are responsible for control of the vehicle and off they go. And we know that it's very dangerous at a collective level. We've had a very long history of reactive safety culture of fixing areas where deaths have occurred or multiple deaths have occurred or serious injuries and fixing those. We have calculating programs. We love a benefit cost ratio, but we do get into proactive safety culture often. And we're getting more and more of this, and it's wonderful to see. I think one of the earliest examples of proactive safety culture in road safety are school speed zones. There's probably others, but that's a pretty big one and a pretty established one, because if you just step one spot down in your ladder with school speed zones, you would never invest in a school speed zone from a traditional calculating safety perspective. You just run the BCR on school speed zones, and they're just not a good investment from that pure economist perspective, because essentially there's not enough kids killed and seriously injured. We're not saving enough lives to warrant the small impact in travel time per vehicle that goes through a school speed zone. And you add all of those minute time impacts up, and then you multiply it by the average hourly income for somebody. It's about $88 an hour. Not they get that in their pocket, but in productivity to the economy, and you work out your dollars and you put a dollar value to a kid's life, and you never get a good BCR. But how grotesque is that we go, well, not enough kids are killed to warrant this. But yet we're very comfortable at doing that in, society is very comfortable at doing that in other parts of the road environment. And that's where, we see, though, that proactive nature of saying, no, we're not going to accept this. We're going to all just slow down a little bit around schools because, protecting kids is paramount. Anyway, we want to get ourselves up here with the whole system. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm at quite a philosophical start here, so let's get you doing a little something, and hopefully we've got a little quiz that'll pop up on your screen. And the first few questions I've run through, the last one, or the first question I've run through, the second one I haven't, and you're going to have a guess at the speed you say involved across the finish line, unless you've done the road safety audit course with me. I've asked you this question, but you remember you're not being marked on this. You're only marked on the ones after the session. So feel free to just have a guess. So hopefully that's popped up on your screen as well. I can see it. And somebody else can, because I'm seeing some ads coming in. I'll give you a minute to do that. We will take a 2-minute stretch break. Yeah, in about maybe 20 minutes. And don't get too concerned if for some reason the poll hasn't popped up on your screen. The occasional firewall blocks it. I had some trouble with Transport for New South Wales, super firewalls at one point. So
About 5 more seconds, Ken.
Yep. I do have another 6 hours worth of content to get through in the next hour and a half. So we better keep moving on.
Okay, that one.
Okay, how'd we go here? Okay. Which of the following is not a key principle of a safe system? So aim for no mistakes on the road. Well, that's correct. Most of you are onto that. Well, it's really the fact that we can't expect humans not to make mistakes, because that is part of being human. And, we want to minimize mistakes and manage them, but we're not aiming to eliminate mistake making, because we've realized that that's an impossibility. While humans are involved in the system. Usain Bolt, well, okay. 44 kilometers an hour is correct at that crossing the finish line speed. And so quite a lot of you are on that. I've been asking that question for the last 15 years of people. Actually, it couldn't be 15 years, whenever he broke that world record. I was using somebody else before that, but why on earth do I bother asking that question? Well, I asked that question because I use it as an analogy of you imagining parking a car at the end of Usain Bolt's lane. And Usain Bolt running down there at 44 kilometers an hour, and bang, he slams into that car. Now, will he survive that? Well, will he survive that? Well, the answer is probably yes. He will survive that. I mean, he's pretty strong. He's the Hulk of a human. Would any of us survive that? Well, we're a little more debatable because we're a little more fragile. Would our grandparents survive that? Well, no. And here's a little bit of a chart of it, just slightly different, but same principle, of a vehicle speed striking a pedestrian. And this is for all of society. And we see down here 10, 20 kilometers per hour in terms of collision speed, not speed limit. Don't think about speed limit at the moment. Just think about the actual speed of impact and the chance that it's going to result in death. And we see there that 10, 20, 30 kilometers an hour is quite survivable generally for the population. 60, 70, 80, highly unsurvivable. Great man came in up there, but, he's a bit stronger than most people, but generally your tolerance to physical force as an individual is nicely correlated with your maximum running speed. So you should theoretically be able to run full pace at a gum tree and survive. You'll probably hurt yourself in the short term, but you should recover to lead a normal, healthy life. And that's how we evolved, isn't it? That's our structure. But we obviously go faster than that, and things come at us faster than that. And so we need to have a think about the energy involved in this. That's what we're designed for. He's fine. Well, he broke a few ribs, but he came back and he won the gold medal the next year. So that's what we're designed for. We've got this data for other crash types as well. And there's quite a number of people working on PhDs, further getting refinement to all of these data and figures. But we know that a bullet vehicle here, which is the one that does the damage, bullet vehicle into target vehicle, bullet vehicle speeds down around the 30, 40, 50 at this right angle, at these right angles, that's quite survivable generally. But when we're at the 80, 90, 100, we're into highly unsurvivable. And we know that for head-ons, it's up around that 70, 80 kilometre per hour. And that's the speed of each vehicle coming in. Now, throughout the slides, and Kathy mentioned you can get the PDFs, we have sometimes put a little thing here, a little link, and it's hyperlinked to a little bit more information on this topic or some videos or something that if you want to delve into these a bit further, you can. So we've got now some information, some data around this. And for the purposes, a lot of purposes, we draw this line around the 10% there because it's a point of exponential kick up. And it's the 30, 50, 70 for 30 for where pedestrians and cyclists can be struck, 50 for those right angle crashes, 70 for the head-on crashes. And understanding that, you know, we would be wanting things to be slower than that when these crashes are possible. And if we want speeds higher than that, we've got to try to eliminate the possibility of this crash happening or look to manage the energy in that crash and alter it in one way or another. Now, to make your life easier as a safe system assessor, we've created this chart. Now, I mean, we've got a lot more to cover before we get into actually scoring things, but there's a little window into the future where we have more crash types here and we have speeds that these crash types can happen. And you'll see this sort of graduated scale. And you'll see numbers in there. So we can say that, okay, well, what about if a car, passenger vehicle, is impacting with a tree or a pole? Well, we know it's going to be really bad if it's happening around 70 or 80 or above. We know it's still, you know, bad in this range. It starts to get pretty much better and really good at very low speeds. You know, side impact crashes with poles, I kind of like running into them head first without any protection because the side of vehicles are horribly designed to absorb energy. So we will be coming back to this when you get into that scoring, but a fundamental part of a safe system assessment is that you will predict a crash in your mind. You will think about, okay, that crash could happen. How bad is that going to be? And you need to start using this chart to put that score to it. Now, not every crash is in here, so you'll be making some judgments on other ones, but you'll get a good idea. Now, I'll pop this up just, I'll talk briefly to this. This diagram is like the bane of my existence in road safety. It infuriates me. And it doesn't infuriate me because it's wrong or it's bad research. It infuriates me because of how people use it. But what it is the collection of a crash reduction, it's not a crash reduction study, a crash causation study. And so it's people doing root cause analysis and in-depth looking at huge amounts of crashes. And I'm trying to understand, well, what was the cause of this crash? And they come out to find that the driver in this study or road user in some other studies, is somewhere around the 90%. I think this one was actually 94%, but it doesn't matter. Somewhere around 90% root cause. Then we have the vehicles, a small amount, the roads are overlap, but it's all it's all smaller. So the reason I hate this is because people find this, and especially if they're sort of new to road safety, like they go, well, that's the cause. So what we should be doing is fixing the biggest cause. I mean, that's what you do. And that involves us trying to change the human. And that is very hard to do, okay? We can get better outcomes and we're continuing to work on that. But we need to really just think of this as our system failed. And we need to alter the system so that doesn't result in death or serious injury. Ostroads, I took this out of an Ostroads, or driver excess, driver inexperience outside or overlapping. I would just put them squarely in there because our system failed. If somebody's able to do something ridiculous on the road network, drive 200 kilometers an hour down the wrong way on the freeway or something like that, why the system didn't kick in to stop that, as in the vehicle should never have let that happen, or the road environment should have been set up in a way that couldn't happen. Anyway, I just put that out there. And human error is a fascinating topic, and why people make mistakes and the like. But there's a lot of fixation with below this line, the deliberate violators as they're classified in this Centre for Automotive Safety Research study, which was done for Australia. It's a nice, big, juicy 350-page research report, which you could dig into if you want. But deliberate violators, essentially people who know that they are deviating from a set of rules or procedures. Okay? And we know, we know they exist out there, but the media and a lot of the community play it out as this is our road safety problem. The people who are intentionally going at high speeds or overtaking over areas that it's clearly not appropriate to do so in a thoughtful, predetermined, I'm breaking the rules kind of way. The reality is that about 73 or something percent, we'll go 70%, sit in this unintentional violations, mistakes, lapses, slips, pretty much just human error, just us trying to go about our usual business and making normal human mistakes. That's about 70% of our death and serious injury on the road network. Don't get me wrong, this is staggering. However, I think that this often needs to be treated in a very different way, and we need to work on that. This is the kind of stuff I think we can alter with and take a massive chunk out of utilizing technologies and practices and procedures and processes we have at our disposal at the moment. Let's do a little exercise, and this is going to be your opportunity to have a stretch. Fill up your water or your afternoon coffee or whatever you need. And what we're going to do is just get you to do a little bit of mix and match from a traditional approach to road safety, moving to what we're looking for with a safe system. And then, so you're going to try to find on the left here, we've got victim blaming. Well, what would victim blaming? What are we trying to do now? We're trying to, and then you find the appropriate one of those. We're going to do this with a little poll that'll come up shortly. Now, some of these could probably go to multiple places. So again, don't get too stressed out about it, but we want you to have a bit of a think about this. Where have we come from with a traditional approach to road safety? Where are we aiming at with the safe system approach? Have a go at that. Fill up your water. And Kathy, what do you say? Back in 4 minutes?
4 minutes is great, Ken. And if you've got any questions, type them into the chat as well. Otherwise, we'll leave you with your little exercise.
And you can move the poll around the little poll box if you grab it and just we're going to end that poll now. Let's have a look at the results. Ooh, okay, hang on. Let's just look at them on the screen because I'm not sure what happened. I think Kathy and I might have been both hitting the end poll share at once there. Okay, so victim blaming, it's very much now recognizing human error, trying to minimize its consequence and that shared responsibility. So minimize and manage is in terms of mistakes is what I like to say. Emphasis on road user education and compliance. Well, really that effort to create that forgiving system, not that we're going to ignore education and compliance, it's just understanding the forgiving system is what we're targeting. Focus on crash reduction. Well, it's now enhanced focus on consequence, especially severe injury minimization. We're going to try to stop crashes happening in the first place, yes, but there's more focus now on what happens when the crash still happens. This idea of 4 pillars actioned independently, but now more this optimized jointly as an interaction. And mobility safety balance, moving towards that maximizing safe mobility. So Ian Cameron from Western Australia made a pretty nice statement. What a UN platform. We need a paradigm shift in road safety policy to stop the road death epidemic, and we need it now. It is unrealistic to expect that education and enforcement alone will bring the needed step change. Even road users who know and follow the rules make mistakes. A safe system creates an environment in which simple mistakes will no longer kill people or seriously injure people. Okay. So we've had a good chat sort of at a high sort of philosophical level. Now let's bring it to the road and the infrastructure perspective and have a bit of a chat about a few things. So here you can see, excuse me. Sorry. You can see the Melbourne Highway. You can see a flexible barrier system in a narrow flash median. It's a bit of a 2+1 arrangement, which is meaning that, 2 lanes in one direction, 1 lane in the other. And then that will swap every so often, just mean that the overtaking opportunity is given to the other side of the barrier. Now, this project took a long time in the planning and development and faced many, many hurdles along the way and took far longer than anybody ever thought it should in order to put this central barrier system down the middle. Let's just do a little exercise where you type in some of those hurdles you think that they struggled to get through in order to do the planning, design and development of this central barrier system. So just pop them into the chat. I will give a prize away to, there's a couple that I think were particularly interesting. They're not maybe they were the biggest hurdles, but I think ones that were very interesting. So pop a few ideas into the chat there. Okay. So seeing some really good thoughts coming in. It's like some of you have probably tried to put these in with some of the comments in here. We're seeing things around emergency access. Yeah, absolutely. That was That's a good one. Community support or lack of support, property access. The geometry of the road's a good one. Yeah, general acceptance of funding. Yeah, land acquisition, pavement. Pretty much everything in here did come up. Medium width, light, yeah, lighting or lack of lighting. Motorcyclists, definitely was one. Yeah. So the working width of the system was one that fascinated me. So we'll give a prize to Stuart for that one, and I'll explain that shortly. I think Mark was first in with motorcyclists, so that can have a prize there. John was closely followed behind there. Maintenance. Maintenance was a big one. We already gave Stuart a prize for this one, but the maintenance cost, but also the ability to do maintenance was an issue. So as in if there was a patch needed, here, well, where would you, divert vehicles around and all of that sort of stuff. Okay. Well, you can see the number of sort of challenges. And as I said, pretty much everything that you put in there was a challenge. It was something new, it was different. The deflection of the system added considerable amount of time. So that's essentially saying that those who know a flexible barrier system, if a vehicle hits that, the posts sort of flatten or break away, and the system sort of will extend out, absorb the energy and pull the vehicle back. And this would technically go a little bit into the lane. I've probably drawn it far further than it would go into the lane. But, that technically didn't meet the standards. And there was a lot of debate about that, Well, should we spend an extra, whatever it is, widening out here, or should we do this? And a lot of argument and debate and design review workshops and all of that. Now, these are all legitimate things to work through and understand, but there were, a number of people saying, well, we can't do this. We just can't put this barrier system in the middle of the road. And a road safety audit was undertaken. And what did the road safety audit do? Well, it just listed the issues, because that's what the road safety audits are meant to do. The road safety audit said this will deflect into the oncoming lane, and there is a chance that a vehicle will strike it. It doesn't meet the standards and guidelines. Not that a road safety audit is a check against standards and guidelines, but did mention that. Some of these other challenges, turning around and everything like that. The road safety audit, to a degree, was part of the hampering of the implementation of this project. Now, if a safe system assessment had been an option during the development of this project, it would have been able to present the significant road safety advantages of this project. Okay, and that is a really beneficial thing that we haven't had in a sort of concise, systematic and consistent way as an option to us in road safety thinking in the past. Because a safe system assessment not only simply will quantify how much benefit you're going to get from this in a general manner, not just what are all the risks associated with putting this in. It essentially is saying what are all the risks of not putting this in as well. So this is where road safety audits can work really well hand in hand with safe system assessments, and safe system assessments showing value of projects, and also some of the things that are causing risk, but also really highlighting the benefits. There's another bit of that. Roads, you can see there's some motorcycle cushions on there. I'll talk about those later. I don't think that they're a great investment, but anyway, of course, this one got hit. This is a while back now, but after the big debates and things, and then it was out there for a while, not long before, maybe within the first 6 months, it got a hit. Well, it had a few other more minor maintenance nuisance hits and the like, but probably hit. And then one of the people involved in that got in contact with the region, and as you probably worked in a regional office or in a council office, and you know when the public's calling you, you think you're shouting out about something here. But I actually just wanted to say I drive the Melbourne Highway. Been driving for the last 40 years, and you know, this is the first time I've driven and there was that barrier system, and somebody came directly at me, and yeah, if that barrier wasn't there, I think would have you know, been killed, or it would have been very bad. And the engineer in the region was smart enough to get the comms team to get contact with this guy, and they made a video. We popped that into the into your learning management system for you to have a look at. It's only a short video. And some of you will have seen it before, but I think I think it does a wonderful job in illustrating sort of safe system in action, because somebody fell asleep, they left their lane, they were going directly at another vehicle, and they hit the barrier system. And yeah, they've got to repair their car now, but nobody was killed or seriously injured. A mistake was made. The mistake was managed because of that system. Now, an alternate way to look at that is to say, well, we should have stopped that guy falling asleep in the first place. He shouldn't have driven in that state, and those sort of things. And we don't want to ignore trying to get better improvement, but we're not going to eliminate that sort of stuff happening. We've got to try to manage these sort of issues and add that into our design decision making. So, as I keep mentioning, pop any thoughts you have or questions into the chat as we tick along. I'll be asking you things again shortly, but I do want to cover off a couple of these other elements or pillars of the safe system, because in a safe system assessment, you asked a series of qualitative questions that are around road users and vehicles and those sorts of things. Now, it's not really the meat of a safe system assessment, but they're important things for us to broadly think about with any infrastructure project or changes to our road network, so we can sort of understand, is there anything we can do that will help road users be better, be safer, in terms of their behaviour and choices and the like? Is there anything in the vehicle space that we could do? And of course, the speeds in the roads is what we're very used to doing. But let's talk about safer road users for a little bit. So education, enforcement, encouragement, and some sort of licensing system and way that people are gained entry into the system. And I put graduated licensing there, which is a particular sort of way of doing that. In terms of education and road user and getting changes in behaviour, we know that little humans are very good at gathering knowledge and the like. That's not it's not just a road safety thing, obviously, and it's very well known. Kids are great learners, but you can instill good road safety practices in them, and you can get them to be little conduits of that information to their parents often as well. So you can do some great stuff in that space. Young drivers and riders, they're particularly at risk for a number of reasons. It's a fun time in life, and there's lots of exciting things going on, and access to different things. Parties, drugs, alcohol, all this sort of exciting stuff. And there's some things we know about young drivers, but certainly, if we could swap cars between parents and young drivers, we would have significant road safety benefits, because quite often the P-plate driver is in the car with the worst safety features, and the parents, who are far lower risk, are in the car that have basically got airbags everywhere and almost drive itself and brake everywhere. So that's an interesting one. Certainly, not sending drivers on advanced driver training courses. We know that increases their chance of death and serious injury dramatically, because they come out of those courses more confident, take more risks, and the skills that they've gained are nowhere, well, they're just swamped by the increased risk taking. So you're going to be very wary of those, and certainly just the hours on the public road network with the supervising driver are proven to work. So, we're understanding some of that stuff. We understand that in talking to individuals that they are often not, well, they're very much not influenced by their own risk of death or serious injury. There are some exceptions to that if they are the vulnerable road user, as in a cyclist or a pedestrian, they're quite agitated by that and will take action. But the idea of telling this driver, hey, if you text and drive, you might get killed in a crash, it does not resonate generally. Like the driver, most drivers will say, nah, I just do that when it's safe. And a lot of them will be thinking, well, I've done that for the last 10 years and I've not been involved in a crash as a result. And to a degree, I mean, they're not wrong. Like, obviously don't say this to the public, but the odds of an individual driver being killed or seriously injured as a result of texting and driving is absolutely minuscule, right? However, that's not what we're doing. We're thinking about the collective. And you've got to take all of those minuscule risks and add them up, okay? And that becomes a large societal problem of texting and driving. But what we tend to do is talk to the individual as though they are a collective. And we say those things like, if you text and drive, you'll be killed. They just don't believe us. But if you are able to connect that to something more tangible, like this wonderful ad by the TAC, which is that if you text and drive, your kids will text and drive. They're just like, wow, okay, I'm not going to text and drive, at least when the kids are in the car. And it's far more powerful. I mean, there's other great examples of this kind of psychology out there, and speed limits are a fascinating one associated with this. And, we lower a speed limit and we say, well, we're doing this for your safety. You're kidding me, you're doing this for revenue reasons. Well, and then see if we could look for other levers that they're more invested in, because it's not their safety. I mean, it's the collective community safety. And say, we're doing this. Oh, great study out actually Tasmania that showed saying we're doing this for the protection of wildlife is far more palatable than we're doing it for the protection of humans, which I thought was a very interesting sort of insight into how we look at people making mistakes and road safety in general. But anything you can do that's more like this is going to be a good thing. Anyway, I'm off on a slight tangent, but I think it's important to sort of understand a few of these and unpack a few of these things in road safety. I'll check in with Kathy shortly on any questions. So what works? I mean, what works in alteration in behaviour and community and education, that whole school approach to road safety is good, a continuing effort throughout that. Combining it with other partner activities, be that police or infrastructure or the like, can be a wonderful benefit. We have a very supportive and active community in road safety that want to do things. And they're often people who have been touched by road trauma and want to do what they can. And our role can often be to ensure that what they're investing their time and their effort and their dollars in is evidence-based. And that can be really important. I mean, we do see it's a lot of incidents where people are doing things from the absolute best intentions that we know are either not effective or worse, are likely to increase death and serious injury. Things like, as I mentioned, townships sending all of their young drivers to advanced driver training courses, or that, I mean, that's just increasing risk, or taking all of their year 12s through the trauma ward and, you know, saying this is what will happen if you don't drive appropriately. I mean, we know that doesn't work, that it traumatizes kids. It doesn't actually even, well, the only people that it seems to have any sort of measurable effect in terms of behavioral change are the most risk averse, safest people within that cohort anyway. So that's interesting. I'll be with you in a second, Kathy, there. Graduated licensing really works well. So just putting more, like lots of restrictions at the start and then easing those restrictions off over time. Education targeting parents, especially motivated people, which are groups, which are parents and often new migrants as well, especially motivated to understand, you know, ways to keep themselves and their kids and others safe. And education programs that change the way road users use the network. And I'll talk about that more shortly. Kathy.
Thanks, Ken. A question on if advanced driving training was coupled with defensive driving instruction, would this be considered acceptable?
Yeah, it gets really complicated in definitions of these courses. And as I understand, there are, these defensive driving courses, which, you know, show more promise and have some evidence. But the reality, well, what we've got is a fact sheet for you that actually points you at all the research behind this, because you can really get into the depths of it. But anything that is done at high speed that teaches road users to get out of emergency situations like advanced braking techniques, so cadence braking or anything like that, or skid pan training or anything like that, it just is so well researched and so unanimous to show that that increases risk for young males, especially. It's just staggering. Things that are done in a classroom or are done on the public road network to understand risk, to understand strategies for not getting in risky situations are much better, and they show some real positive actions. Then there are the sort of grey areas where it's, you know, braking to show the distance it takes to brake and things like that, which I don't exactly know whether they where exactly they sit within those studies.
Okay, thank you.
Well, a few tactics don't tend to work that well. Scaring people. I talked about, you know, taking them through the emergency ward or the like. Skill-based driver training we've already just talked about. One-off events. Driver simulators are an interesting one. People keep going into trying to get these driver simulators to do a whole lot of stuff, and we're yet to see an actual good study, independent study, and independence is an important thing there, to show their benefit. Membership or participation in car racing or go-karting clubs is very similar to the skill-based driver training stuff. And just providing that information only, you know, don't, you know, X number of people have been killed falling asleep or whatever, doesn't get us that behavioral change. But if you're able to give a direct strategy, so, you know, take a break every 2 hours of driving or something like that, is far more effective. We know that some of these, though, can be beneficial in policy reform. So if you are trying to launch either changes in regulatory practices like new laws or the like, or change your policies around things or the like, you can set yourself a better platform by scaring the public or telling them all the information, you know. So this is where you might actually get some of these in, and we've seen sort of the TAC back in the day doing a lot of fear tactic style advertisements, shock and awe stuff, and legislation comes in after that, and drink driving laws, fatigue laws for heavy vehicles and things like that start to filter in after the public has really been shocked into why their individual behaviour often doesn't change. I'll check back in with Kathy shortly, but I think this is an interesting one where we see this is number of crashes, and these are learners, so there's supervising driver with them, and then of course P-platers out there by themselves, and you can see the number of crashes shoots up and then it goes down over time. Now, these are, in this study, were actual crashes. You can do this by crashes per vehicle kilometres travelled, which is a more consistent and objective way to measure one against the other. And it comes out not quite as dramatic as this, but still in a similar form. This tells me a particular story that, driving experience isn't really, so anybody who says, oh, if we could get everybody to be as good a driver as Michael Schumacher, then we wouldn't have crashes on the road network. Well, it's just wrong. Like, it's not the skills. I mean, these people have zero skills, right? And they're actually comparatively safer. So anyway, that's just an interesting bit of information. Kathy, was there anything that I was...
There was a comment that's come in, Ken, which is good comment on personally experiencing trauma leading to becoming an advocate. Personal experience is an interesting area, particularly when considering behaviours that are known to be unsafe from a population-wide view, but it makes it hard to sell. So if somebody texts or speeds habitually without incident, their personal experience is at odds with the population-wide risk, so they are less accepting of mitigations.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like that has summarised it beautifully. And in fact, you get a instantaneous feedback loop every time you speed and you're not killed or seriously injured. And so, like, it just fuels the fire of saying that this is not about safety, because the individual driver is seeing it from that perspective. So yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to delve into this and try to understand the mix between behavioral psychology, public policy, the physics of it, the kinetic energy of it, the human factors of it's just you just get really stuck into it.
And just a quick question on this slide that you've got here, Ken. For the L plate with such a low crash incidence there, is it because there's a qualified supervising driver in that scenario? What makes that one so low?
Well, I think it's multifactorial, and yes, I think that is definitely a case. They have a supervisor, they have somebody next to them, they regulate their risk taking. They probably self-regulate in terms of where they like where they go and what sort of situations they drive in and the like. So yeah, it's just quite a bit in there. Yeah, and as Stuart says, more cautious. Interestingly, as you run this out, I'm sort of getting sort of fixated on this. It does sort of flatten out, and then it goes down in terms of raw numbers when you get to older road users. It really goes to next to nothing. And we the media loves it when a grandpa or a grandma accidentally hits the accelerator and flies off the shopping center into a thing. Comparatively so rare compared to all of the trauma happening in here. But makes a great story. And then always the relicensing check debate comes back up. If you do it per kilometres travelled, it does do a little bit of a kick up again, but it's comparatively it's also small down that end of the scale because they self-regulate. They don't drive. Like they're not doing. They're just driving to the shops or anyway. I'm off on another tangent.
There's a comment here about Greg Murphy from the New Zealand media. Every time particularly bad crash happens in New Zealand, he's on the screen bemoaning the lack of driver training. But Helene is saying that there was a data analysis that she did a few years back for Queensland, and the data of fatal accidents caused by young drivers has been reduced from about a decade ago. It's due to the Queensland government increasing the L plate and P plate holders' driving hours. So that's been a similar scenario around the country, Ken?
Yeah, and actually I grabbed this study and chart off the introduction of the graduated licensing and the introduction of the 120-hour driver learner driver requirements as well, which is seeing similar stuff across a number of jurisdictions, and you get some really great benefit from that. Okay, let's keep ticking along. I think incentivizing is underutilized in road safety. So this is essentially paying people to be safer at a raw level. And there's a number of ways that can play out, and it does seem to be somewhat beneficial. There's options to give free licenses to people who manage to navigate through the probationary period without any demerit points, and that has been trialled and evaluated as successful and beneficial. So there's that kind of stuff. There's other unique ways of doing it. So I think there's great options there. If we can advertise that specific behaviour, as I said, rest every 2 hours or 3 hours of driving, rather than that generic drive safely kind of comment. And thinking about what we can do to get people to recall messages, but then actual changes in action. So most of the measures of how effective advertising and things is done with recall, and to translate, can people remember it? Can they recall it? To are they altering their actions is a very hard thing to do. But there's been some, impressive stuff in that. Certainly comedy is a great recall mechanism across the board, especially though with our biggest target audience being young males. If you can have the right comedy, we know they'll remember it. And as long as we can then lead it to action, we get some great stuff. And we sort of want to change this overall culture. The New Zealanders just have some of the best road safety ads from that recall and comedy perspective. I'm not sure how they go to changing action, but I think they're pretty amazing. We put a few really great ones into the learning management system for you to watch, and from a few other jurisdictions as well. But interestingly, as we're starting to see more rollout of ads and ways that we're discussing road safety with the community, we're seeing some of the safe system messaging coming through. This is actually a New Zealand ad, and then you can see that the South Australian government took it, and the New South Wales government also took it as well. Talking about people making mistakes, now this comes with an actual ad, some of you have probably seen, but we're talking about people making mistakes there. We're not saying that you're going to make a mistake, others will make mistakes, and we're going to slow down to, cater for others. How do we talk to the community about human tolerance to physical force and kinetic energy? And the Victorian government tried this fellow, Graham, who's a life-size sculpture, and he looks scarily human, and he is the only person designed to survive on the roads. And the year 10s go in for their physics class, and they look at Graham and they can you can use an iPad and look inside at his structure, and then they go through a process of sort of questioning why you would need to look like that to survive on the roads, the energies, and then redesigning the road network to make Graham look more like a human, using lots of IT and stuff like that. And it's really simple stuff like slowing speeds down, raising crossings, putting barrier systems in, and these sort of things to manage that energy. And Graham sort of becomes a human again. I think these are really great ways to sort of instill some fundamental safe system thinking into the next generation. Now, enforcement is a really important part of road safety, but it's a supporting part of road safety. The police are very, they're very forthcoming in saying that they just support the city. It's not them that are going to be fixing all of road safety. But we know we need to do that strategic enforcement effort due to the cost and the resources. There's two areas of enforcement. We've got specific deterrence and general deterrence. There are two sort of ways to do it. Specific deterrence is if you have been fined for something, you hopefully won't do that again at that spot. General deterrence is that you could be fined for doing something, and so you won't do it anywhere. And visual presence is quite an effective technique. Just having the police out there to lessen different behaviours. But the future is obviously electronic and enforcement, and less being able to do more enforcement for less cost, and we certainly know speed cameras work well, red light cameras. Point-to-point speed cameras work super effectively, where you're taking photos at one point and 10 kilometres down the road, another one, and just working on the time and then what the average speed was. And the vehicles themselves and the ability to regulate risk-taking behaviour within the vehicle is a massive frontier for us in road safety if we can get political and public, support behind it. Alcohol interlocks have been around quite a while, where you've got to, blow into something before you start the vehicle, or the vehicle won't start if there's alcohol in your system, and then if you drive, it actually beeps at you random points in time, and you've got 5 minutes to blow into it again after, we put out the first generation, and then there was a bit of people getting others to blow in it and then driving their cars and things like that. There is nothing from a technology sense stopping the same idea being placed for recidivist speeders, people who consistently speed. Well, we could just put speed interlocks in their vehicle. No worries. I mean, the technology is not our problem. It's the political will and desire for that. I think there's a, great frontier in that. I mean, this is my Vic Roads car like 16 years ago or something, which would tell me what speed zone I was in and beep at me, and then you get back to the office and you'd be able to look at what speed you were going everywhere and where you were over the speed limit and the like. So, that technology's been there forever. It's just that the privacy lawyers and others go into a meltdown when we talk about deployment of this in a wider field. So I put in some different sort of summary points. I'm not going to read through those, but there's some sort of key learnings in there. Vehicles are interesting, and we get a lot of comments in road safety around the fact that, well, vehicles are going to solve all the problems. So don't, why are we wasting money on barriers and road upgrades and anything like that, or like just let the vehicles sort it all out. And I hope we're right. I hope down the track in 30 years or 40 years, it's the vehicles are running the show, and we don't have any decision making in the system from that perspective. But it's a long time away, and we know that the vehicle safety features are continuing to get better and integrate into the system, but they have their limitations. Now, we know ANCAP's been successful in encouraging safety uptake, and that's been good. But we know, like, take for example, this is the side impact pole test. You can see the dummy in there. So essentially, vehicle slides into the pole at a certain speed. We're going to make sure that dummy doesn't get a level 3 acquired brain injury. Anybody? Oh, I'll give a prize to the person who can guess the speed that that test happens at. So that what speed is it? Yeah, slide in there.
You're looking for a specific number, Ken? We've got anywhere from 20 up to 60 at the moment. Oh, 80. We even got an 80.
It's just gone up from 29 to 32 kilometers an hour.
Ouch. Okay, so I think Mark's got it with 20 to 30. He went with a range. That was a clever move. But yeah, and oh my God, is exactly right. I think the reaction there.
Yeah, so your 5-star vehicle is pretty limited in the sense that we drive the road network at much higher speeds than that. Obviously, there's run off road and side impacts in poles and trees and things. And yeah, really, in theory, we can't be sure that anybody crashing above about that 30-ish, 32, 35 kilometers per hour is not going to result in these acquired brain injuries or worse. So just showing the limitations. But as I say, lots of advances. We have now pedestrians and cyclists included in the ANCAP safety rating testing. So vehicles are being designed not for just the occupants of the vehicle and their protection, but for the road users they're going to hit as well. So like the bonnet will pop up on most new vehicles, bit of cushioning there as they strike a pedestrian. A airbag will pop out over some of them. Certainly, Volvo will certainly put a nice airbag out there, and if you strike a pedestrian, should stop before we do that. But yeah, so how long until we're in these vehicles and we don't have a steering wheel and the vehicle does it all? And well, the answer is that it'll integrate into the fleet. We'll see a lot of levels of autonomy. There are 5 levels of autonomy. And, this vehicle here without a steering wheel is what we call either a level 4 or a level 5 autonomous vehicle or automated vehicle. The difference between 4 and 5 is essentially a level 4 vehicle is like geotagged or confined to specific roads or areas. A 5 is just like, can go anywhere, just like we could as drivers. So that's the slight nuance there. But it's a long time away. Maybe, in our lifetime, we're seeing a big saturation of this sort of stuff, but it's a huge amount of death and serious injury between now and then. And even when you get to that end, it's very complex. And most people don't know, and most people are just guessing at it, and I'm just guessing at it as well. But, I see it as a massive social disparity and just, magnifying the social disparity we've got in basically, people will be able to afford the safety and others will still not be able to do that. There'll be a big period of that. We'll have all sorts of crazy interactions with vulnerable road users and how these sort of things. And yeah, so it's very interesting. But what we do know is there's great stuff happening and that will filter in as we go. So, vehicles are autonomous in that sense that they're braking them by themselves. And so we'll see vehicles like that Mercedes brake before they hit somebody and knock their leg off like that. But that's a kind of win because that vehicle hit at very low speed. Just happened to knock the leg off. But it's not all about preventing the crash. It's about lessening the severity of the crash as well. And I'll jump through speed and a little glimpse into next module, but to give Kathy time to just show you the learning management system because we want you to be comfortable with that. But Speed, and again, I'm not talking about speed limits here, just let's talk about speed, velocity. I'm going to remind you of a few things about speed, or maybe tell you if you haven't had this. So this one, it's not a linear relationship, speed and crash force, in the sense that, let's just look here, 60 kilometers per hour, object at 45 meters that steps out or whatever. So the vehicle's driving along. You've got braking, so you've got reacting time. That's basically, human sees, processes, lifts foot, hits the brakes, and then brakes, and they'll just basically touch it at 45 meters away. If we go up 10 kilometers per hour to 70 kilometers per hour, just 10 kilometers per hour more, we see that they'll hit it at 46 kilometers an hour. Okay, so that's showing you that it's not a linear relationship there. Now we get, the vehicles will improve some of that, but another one here is interesting, is that for change in speed versus change in crashes as a percentage, we see a fourth power relationship between fatal and speed change, so percentage of fatal and speed change, and a third power relationship for serious injuries. So what that means, if you're not a person who sort of really remembers power relationships in maths and the like, is that small changes in speed can have dramatic changes in the higher level serious injuries and fatalities and less. And actually, if you do all crashes, it comes in at a second power relationship about down there. So we often get fixated on these big dramatic reductions in speed, but if we can get smaller reductions in speed, we can actually see some pretty powerful outcomes in terms of reduction in risk. The community's attitude to speed and speed management is fascinating. And if you're working in that space, please get in contact. I've collect studies around different aspects of this. I used to manage speed zoning for Victoria for quite a number of years, and it's just so fascinating. But a lot of the public just don't believe that lowering or changing speed limits will reduce crashes on the roads. So it's around 50% aren't convinced on that. Females way smarter than males on that, and many other things actually. But so it's just not believed in that sense. Interestingly, though, the lowering of a speed, so this one, lowering current speed limits would reduce the severity of injury or crashes. And we've got a whole lot more people agreeing with that. So I think sort of that basic understanding of physics is good. Sort of scratch your head a little bit about this. I can only sort of hypothesize that people are thinking that, well, they won't crash, and then I start to go, well, what are these people thinking? And then I go, well, maybe they're saying, well, people won't, if we lower speed limits, they won't comply with them. So it'll be just as severe anyway. It can be only rational explanation to that in my mind, unless they completely have no idea of speed and force and impact. But Anyway, I was updating the Australians Guide to Road Safety Part 3, which is speed and speed management recently, and popped this diagram in from Europe because it's an interesting one, and they're basically saying that whatever vehicles we have, whatever road environment we have, and whatever road user we have, as long as we filter it through an appropriate speed, we have a safe road transport system. It makes sense. You need to understand your biomechanics of injury before you jump into that. But it makes sense. but it's a very politically contentious one, isn't it? But we know that safe speeds can be achieved through infrastructure and or speed limits. And we know infrastructure changes to reduce speed are far more politically and community accepted when people have to slow down to navigate over a speed hump or for a roundabout. They're far more okay with that than when we put the black number with the red circle around it, when they believe that that's legislative, impinging on their freedoms and the like. Explaining why the speed limits are in place improves acceptance and compliance, and protecting vulnerable road users is generally well accepted. And by vulnerable, I mean that in both senses, in terms of our traditional vulnerable road users being pedestrians, cyclists and motorcyclists, but also in terms of young and old, definitely. Intoxicated, you don't get as much support, unfortunately. I did try to implement 40km/h zoned out zones in Victoria at one point for the areas of intoxicated pedestrians. The did not fly. We ended up getting them in as strip shopping centres. But anyway, that's another story. There you go. There's a strip shopping centre, which is a zoned out zone. But don't worry, it's the variable speed limit signs and the like. And I think that's a great entry into some lower speed limits in areas and trying to navigate that incredibly complex interaction with the community and politics around speed and speed management. All right, Kathy, I'm just going to, in 3 minutes here or 4 minutes here, just give a little window into next session. And then if you're ready to show people through the learning management system, that'd be good. But what does risk equal? Anybody? Any takers on that? See, I'm not 100% well today.
Have you got the spicy cough, Ken?
Not the spicy cough. Well, I can't get a rat to give me a positive. So, and we're in a society now where nobody believes you're sick unless you've got a positive rat test.
All right, we've got.
What do we got? Risk equals
occurrence times severity or likelihood and consequences.
I'll take occurrence times severity.
Okay.
Because that's nice. That's yes, likelihood times consequence, occurrence times severity, probability times severity. It's anything that is basically what's the chance something's going to happen? What are the odds it's going to happen? But then what's the magnitude of that happening? So, what's the risk of recession? Well, what's the chance we go into recession? And then how deep a recession are we going to go into? That's the risk of recession. Health risk, inroad safety, it's the same. What's the chance of a crash? And then what's the severity of that crash? How bad's that crash going to be? But in a safe system assessment, right? We've done this little thing and extracted out exposure from likelihood. So exposure now becomes part of the game. And it's how many road users are exposed to this risk. And what's the individual likelihood of that risk manifesting? And then how bad is it going to be? And that's what you essentially do in the meat of a safe system assessment, is put numbers to each of those with different crash types. And we'll start getting into that next session. But exposure, you can see here, at simple levels, if you can stop people entering an intersection or crossing at like level crossing, here's a big mound of dirt and a road closed sign behind that. No vehicles are going through this level crossing. Nobody is exposed to that crash. We have zero exposure. Also, like if you completely separate, so we have all the vulnerable road users here and all the vehicle traffic up here. We don't have an exposure to vulnerable road user crashes. All right. When you look at likelihood, there's a whole lot of stuff we've been doing for a long time. It's all about likelihood and some new stuff as well. But we know that sealed shoulders, audio tactile, edge line and center line, wide center lines, lighting. All of this is reducing the chance of a crash happening. All right. Even traffic signals, they're all about reducing the chance of a crash happening. Less chance that a crash happens. We're telling people when they can go and they can't go. But those don't do anything for the severity of the crash, okay? The severity of the crash is going to need to alter the speed, the angle, the vulnerability of the users involved, the way that energy is managed. So, you know, here slowing vehicles at a conflict point at an intersection where we know when the crash happens, it's going to be less severe. A barrier system, you know, you hit a barrier system, you slide along the barrier system, dissipate energy over time, it's a less severe crash. It is a crash. You've hit a barrier, you've hit something, it's a crash. But the severity is less because it's dissipated over time. And so what we're going to do is next session, get into that, really delve into exposure, likelihood, and severity and help you unpack those because they are fundamental. You need to understand what is exposure, what is likelihood, what is severity in order to be able to undertake a safe system assessment. Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks very much for that session. So this is the learning management system and this is the course you're in. So the link to join the webinar is here, but it's also in your calendar invites. And this is the resources section and it is full of resources. So there's a couple of things in there to alert you to. Safe system assessment fact sheets, which Ken will run through in a couple of sessions. But here we've got a whole range of resource documents for you. So there's a whole section for TMR if you're from Queensland. There's other jurisdictions in there in terms of their, there's the South Australian Safe System Assessment Guidelines. There is the Victorian one somewhere in here. There we go. Ken talked a lot about the what doesn't work for young road users, and this is the excellent fact sheet here, which I've just brought up there. So this goes into a little bit more detail. He talked about the fear tactics and skill-based driver training and that sort of thing. So there's more information in this fact sheet here if you want to have a read. So that's a little bit about the resources. In this module, that's where the presentation materials is. Some of the videos Ken talked about, and I don't think he talked about the Mythbusters episode, but just for fun, watch some Mythbusters there. The quiz that we ask you to do at the end of the session is here. So the module 1 quiz is here and you just click on attempt quiz now and you get 3 attempts at the quiz as well. So that's what we'd like you to do at the end of this session. And I think I've covered everything. Do we have any questions around the learning management system or getting into this or anything like that? If you can't find your login, it could be in your junk and it's come from Safe System Solutions. But you know, if that's too hard, just send me an email and I'll make it again for you. Oh, we've got 5 minutes to go. Ken, can I share a photo that Mark has just sent through? And this was, and we might unmute Mark if you can do that on your end, Ken, because well, I've already given it away. It was a 37-kilometre side impact crash. There he is there. Thanks. Mark, so that's how easy it is to share things with the group if you'd like to share something. So over to you, Mark. If we can hear you.
He's unmuted himself, so he can't have any right.
He's unmuted himself, but maybe there's no microphone. Yeah. Okay.
It does show you the, astronomical violence of a side impact pole crash, doesn't it?
Yeah, I
Can you
think
hear me now?
this was a
Yeah, we can hear you now, Mark.
Oh, okay.
Excellent. Sorry, technology issues. My 12-year-old disappeared. Yeah. So yeah, this is from a crash I attended in my previous life as a serious crash investigator with NZ Police. So that pole impact one just ran at home. I use this photo in a bit of training and have people guess the speed. And typically it's 50k plus. I was very surprised because that's the 37km/h impact speed. There was one we calculated based on deformation to the vehicle using crush energy and took it right back. The event started at 92km/h with a loss of control on bend, and a series of yaws before the 5-inch round tree did this to that car. Not a big tree, but yeah, unfortunately the driver died. The 2 people in the front seat of the car, there was one in the front seat and one in the footwell, and the 3 in the back all suffered varying degrees of injury. But it was just a tragic example of peer pressure, very young driver, young friends, all been at a party and drinking a little bit, and then being egged on to race down this particular road to go to somewhere else. But yeah, it just rams home how little protection this side of a vehicle gives anyone. You can't do much in the way of crush zones with a doorway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was even a comment that came in on the chat, well, behind it's asking if it's a real vehicle or a plastic one in terms of how much deformation you're seeing in there. And it is absolutely staggering, and with just the physics of it. And we'll delve into that in next session about what we can think about in terms of managing that sort of energy in those crashes. And you make a lot of good points. They're all multifactorial, and we've got to think about all those elements. But thank you, Mark, for sharing that. And let's give people a couple of minutes. They can jump into the quiz and knock it off, and log in a little bit early next session for a chance to win a prize.
Thank you, Ken. And I will, yes, I'll send links again to anyone. Just send me an email if you can't get into the learning management system. And yeah, okay, great. Catch you on Thursday. Thanks, everyone. Bye.